A few years ago, it would have been inconceivable to even think of Israel having good relations with Arab countries. In a layman's understanding of the Middle East, Israel almost always forms the centerpiece. The Jewish nation is surrounded by enemies, yet its enemies are scared to their very bones by Israel. We've all been told this by someone at some point in our lives. Israel has been the idol which survives, or rather flourishes, in the most hostile of environments. Growing up, we never imagined that Israel's hostile environment would ever change. However, Israel's neighborhood is changing. The Arab world is growing more and more friendly towards the Jewish nation. The bogey of a free Palestine is being abandoned. What started as an initiative of former President Donald Trump to achieve true and lasting peace in the Middle East is now entering its most decisive phase. Saudi Arabia is soon set to sign the Abraham Accords. Hi and welcome. This is TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I am your host Sanbir Anhotra, and in this video I will tell you how another bunch of major Arab states are set to officially befriend Israel. Let's begin. Saudi Arabia has always wanted to normalize ties with Israel. It wanted to do so last year itself, when President Donald Trump first brokered peace agreements between Israel and various Arab states. However, due to a multiplicity of factors, it could not. President Donald Trump is gone, but his Israel and Middle East policy is being followed in toto by the Biden administration, even if secretly and complemented with the usual Democrat warmongering. The same was witnessed during the 11-day Israel-Hamas war, where Joe Biden went out of his way to support the Jewish nation. As reported by TFI, the Biden administration is now looking to carry forward the Abraham Accord legacy of Donald Trump and is said to be in silent discussion with multiple Arab states to normalize ties with Israel. Saudi Arabia is one of these states, with the only difference being that Riyadh does not require any convincing by the United States. The Abraham Accords have the approval of Saudi Arabia since the very beginning, and it is only a matter of time before the leader of the Arab world signs the historic accord. Saudi Arabia has been posturing very strategically in order to let the concerned parties know it is keen to normalize ties with Israel. In a historic step, the United Arab Emirates, which was the first Arab state to sign the Abraham Accords, opened its embassy in Israel on Wednesday. The UAE also became the first Gulf state to open an embassy in Israel, as its envoy hailed the trade and investment opportunities that closer ties would bring at a flag-raising ceremony also attended by Israel's president. The Emirati embassy's inauguration came weeks after Israel's foreign minister Yair Lapid cut the ribbon on its embassy in Abu Dhabi. The inauguration of the UAE's embassy in Israel was given prominent coverage by Arab News, which is a Saudi Arabia-based major English news publication. At least as of May 2019, Arab News was owned by Prince Turki bin Salman Al Saud, the brother of the ruling Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. The newspaper has been described as a mouthpiece for the Saudi regime and regarded as reflecting the official position of the Saudi royal family and government. Oman had recently stated that it would not be normalizing ties with Israel. This had surprised many, as Oman is generally seen as a moderate Arab nation. Oman has always played the role of a facilitator in the region. However, Saudi Arabia has been pushing Oman to normalize ties with Israel. There is simply no reason why Oman should not normalize ties with Israel when Riyadh is itself in favor of the same. In a rare visit to Saudi Arabia, the leader of Oman signed a memorandum of understanding to establish a joint coordination council that aims to coordinate the two countries' stance in all fields. Relations between Oman and Saudi Arabia had long been cold despite their shared border. A closer relationship could be an economic boon for Oman, which is struggling to diversify its economy away from oil. However, Oman will have to return the favor by normalizing its ties with Israel. Economic dividends are more than sufficient reason for Oman to sign the Abraham Accords. Meanwhile, latest developments would have boosted the Sultan of Oman's confidence, which would make it easier for him to decide in favor of normalizing ties with Israel. Most importantly, we now come to Jordan. According to reports, Jordan is the closest to signing the Abraham Accord with Israel. Last week, Jordan's King Abdullah and Israel's newly sworn president Isaac Herzog spoke over the phone. The two leaders agreed to strengthen ties in the areas of economics and tourism. Recently, Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and King Abdullah secretly met in Amman, where Israel struck a deal to sell Jordan an additional 50 million cubic meters of water this year and allow Jordanian imports to the West Bank to go up from $160 million last year to about $700 million. This was followed by a public meeting between Israel's Foreign Minister Yair Lapid and his Jordanian counterpart Ayman Safadi last Thursday. Importantly, according to a report by the Middle East Monitor, Jordan will finalize a normalization of relations with Israel during an upcoming visit by Jordan's King Abdullah II to Washington. The Biden administration seems to have convinced that it would be in the best interest of Jordan to normalize ties with Israel. It is worthy to be mentioned here that Jordan was the main reason why Saudi Arabia did not sign the Abraham Accord with Israel last year itself. A recent Washington Post report revealed how Trump's dream to unite American allies, Israel and Saudi Arabia, under his deal of the century could never materialize because Jordan's King Abdullah II did not bend on the issue of making concessions on the status of Jerusalem and other Palestine-related issues. When Trump made an attempt to bring Israel and the Arab countries closer, Jordan's King Abdullah started weaponizing Islamic sentiments over Jerusalem. The Hashemites felt that any agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel over Jerusalem could erode Jordan's control over the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, which is the third holiest site of Islam. Such moves on the part of Jordan made it very uncomfortable for Saudi Arabia to sign an Abraham Accord, even though MBS indirectly supported the Arab-Israeli peace process last year. How could Saudi Arabia, the undisputed leader of the Muslim world, publicly embrace Israel while Jordan grew vocal about Jerusalem? It would have made MBS look bad. Now that Jordan is all set to normalize ties with Israel, Saudi Arabia can breathe a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, a Saudi-backed venture firm, SoftBank, has become the second investment giant to open an office in Israel within the past 3 months. SoftBank is seen as the world's leading technology fund, having invested huge sums into companies such as Uber, Alibaba, and TikTok. The Saudi-backed venture has appointed ex-Mossad chief Yossi Cohen to head its new office in Israel. The indications are thus clear. The Abraham Accords are soon about to receive a big impetus as major Arab states, including Saudi Arabia, are about to normalize bilateral ties with Israel.